Mario Galaxy is one of few games in the history of the genre to be almost universally nostalgic. And while rose-tinted glasses can carry games on a subjective level, objectively this game is held up and even beats out every modern take on Mario, whether it be in the second or third dimension.
Mario Galaxy features an amazing soundtrack, immersive yet intuitive mechanics and gameplay, and unmatched quality world design so different and out there from anything done before or since. Along with this, it also has its fair share of great boss fights. This video has been an idea of ours for a long time, so to finally see it come to fruition is exciting. Let's get into it.
Spring Mario is in a league of its own in terms of awful and obnoxious mechanics, and the Gunner, while well made in its other and far better Gold Leaf variant, has nothing commendable from a design perspective. The fire pressures at both ends of his turret exist to be a nuisance, and his obscene fire rate is the cherry on top. Just overall, this guy's a dud.
This fight mostly suffers from feeling too long. It's just a waiting game for her to fire out a shell that you can pick up to chuck in her face. Occasionally, she'll send some fireballs at you or summon some Magic Koopas to help her out, but these are still virtually non-existent threats. The second fight in Deep Dark Galaxy is a little better because at the end it's restricted to a smaller arena which heats things up a bit, but it's still rather boring in my opinion. I think it's pretty hard to hate most Mario bosses since none of them are likely to cause you much grief, so I wouldn't say I have a particular disdain for this fight, but it's just one that I don't really care for.
Dino Piranha is an unusually memorable boss for a forgettable boss, if that makes sense. And what I mean is that he's like almost every introductory boss in any game in that you curb stomp the hell out of the guy using the main mechanic of the game, and it gets harder as it goes, i.e. Mario's Rule of 3. It's simple, passive, and gives you the rundown on the game's boss fight combat, and while yes, it does do its job, Dino Piranha is constrained by its limitations from being an early game boss, thus its placement alongside the bottom dregs of the game.
Dino Piranha, but he's got fire on him now. Wait till his tail isn't burning and treat him like you did his tutorial counterpart. He's not really so hard in my opinion, but he has a bit of a leg up on the original for the added danger of fireballs, so he gets the higher slot of the two.
I like the Top Man Tribe. They're funny to me. And to my benefit, Battle Rock is full of them, so you should be soundly adapted by the time Top Maniac comes around. He's only different in that you jump on him to rid him of his saw blades opposite his fellow top men. Then after you blue ball the guy, you spin him into the surrounding electrical fence, rinse and repeat.
While his Toy Time counterpart is an infuriating train wreck, this variant is actually pretty fun. I like how his bubbles don't damage you themselves and just send you flying backwards into potential damage. Watching Mario get hit by bubbles is kind of funny to me, so even when it keeps happening over and over, I don't really get too annoyed by it. The arena is interesting too. I like how you gotta navigate some platforming to reach his cockpit and slam your ass onto his windshield. Ground pounding is a move that most people just take at face value for how ubiquitous it is in platforming games, but it's sort of an unusual tactic if you think about it. A lot more amusing than just punching or something, so I'm glad it's a thing though. This Undergrunt Gunner isn't too challenging, but it's unique and fun enough to not be a drag.
When I was younger, this was straight up miserable. I hated this thing and I couldn't understand what to do for my life. I've gotten my fair share of fights with Bugaboom since then, and I can sum it up in 2 words. Ground pound. As B Mario, you fly over top and clock him from up above. In complement, the arena is pretty well made, but it does absolutely nothing to help in the last phase. If anything, it feels like all the Vanandelians and honeycombs are placed counter to where Bugaboom flips to his normal position. It's not a matter of life or death or anything of the sort, but sometimes the waiting game can get a bit ridiculous, like 3 to 4 minutes ridiculous. However, I enjoyed this boss a lot, and while it's somewhat generic, the positives outweigh the negatives and make it deserving of admiration.
Of all the things to have a mortal weakness to, coconuts are a pretty weird one. I can get that though, I totally hate coconuts, so I can't knock King Caliente too much for that. I don't have any idea why they're green, probably just some weird outer space variant of coconut I guess. Anyways, this fight is all about spinning the coconuts he shoots back at him in a volley until he messes up and takes a hit to the face. Eventually, he sends out some minions to make things marginally harder for you, but they don't make a major difference. Follow the 3-hit rule and he sinks down into the lava, although anyone who's played a Mario game before should know that lava is not a very consistent way to kill someone. Despite being only the second boss you fight in the game, he's a pretty good time and makes good use of the reflection mechanic.
Okay, so for a boss like this, a middle of the road, not bad, but sort of meh placement is fair. But Alex put this dude at the 7 spot, which I just can't wrap my head around because he's Cheese City. The intention was to have you climb up to him 3 separate times, but with a decently timed jump and spin, you can just hop over his AoE and repeat the cycle. Realistically, Baron Burr is just a giant Lil Burr with an extra R in his name and a crown on top, so you should have no trouble putting him to rest.
Considering he's a boss that you fight entirely underwater, he's surprisingly good. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, but it's fixed by giving you plenty of shells to keep you moving at a good pace as well as to fire at King Fin himself. The red ones even home in on him, which feels a little overpowered, but it's not like the challenge is, what people are playing Mario Galaxy for anyways, so I'm actually in favor of this. I'd rather just find him and huck a shell in his general direction than have to line up a shot perfectly and pray he doesn't move too much. If that is your thing though, there are green shells lying around that don't have aim hacks, so it's up to the player here. It's fun zooming around the water, dodging the bullet bills and fish bones, which is enough for me to like him just fine.
Usually a boss so forgettable is complemented by being equally boring and repetitive, yet Major Bros is one of few bosses who sort of just exist to me, but every time I replay him, he's more fun than I remembered. He works sort of like the Star Bags, but instead of chasing him down, he chases after you. The last section is actually pretty damn hard during the Daredevil run, but normally you should be safe as long as you play it smart. Major Bros is a really underrated boss who's based on one of my favorite mechanics in the game. With a lot to love and little to hate, he rightfully earns his place.
Considering how much I hate the Sling Pod Galaxy, it's a wonder that a boss based around the same mechanic is actually pretty fun. I think it's probably the lack of instant kill stuff in the arena. He's a pretty unique boss, who I would say is also a little more complex than most in this game. You can break his gunk blaster things to stun him and buy yourself time to launch yourself into the big one on his butt, which flips him over so you can take down his spider udders or whatever those are. Rather than 3 times, you only have to do this twice, oddly enough. I think that's good since it takes a little while to do all this, so it'd definitely be overstaying its welcome if it went on that long. It's a creative and satisfying fight, although not particularly exciting admittedly, hence my ranking of it being a little lower than Jack's was.
This game did a great job of recycling bosses over reusing them, a la King Caliente and Bowser Jr.'s Lava Reactor. I was half expecting to fight him again back during my first playthrough on the Wii just because the Good Egg one felt too grandiose to be a one-time thing. Sure enough, my half expectations were met, and the second King Caliente manages to up the ante to a surprisingly high bar considering you already fought him. Right off the bat, he looks wicked being all charred up from the lava, and the intentional difficulty through sinking platforms made it a lot more engaging than the first. I think Mario platformers overall do a pretty good job with making repeat bosses more difficult through unique approaches like the arena. There are exceptions, and in this case the extra addition of meteors that give it a scent of chaos. Rarely do I commend the reuse of the same boss in a game, but this is a case where it's not only acceptable but well done.
I really dig these Bowser fights they have every 2 domes. He's got a lot more going on than the bosses in regular galaxies and has pretty cool music too. I like the way you beat him. It's satisfying just knocking him around the planet and trying to predict where his spin trajectory will put him when he pops up on the other side. I also dig the looks of the planets you fight on. The glass with the lava interior look is pretty cool and even fits into the way you beat him, which is an added bonus. With Bowser having an increasingly comedic role in games lately, it was nice revisiting one of the few games where Bowser is more of a serious evil instead of a grouchy goofball, and these fights are a nice showcase of his power even if it's not too demanding skill-wise.
Everybody loved Mega Leg when this game was in its Wii Prime. The total excitement of crawling up this massive machine of destruction was so unique, yet retrospectively, or rather on revisit, it's way too short to topple those above it. The leg looks so much larger from the bottom than it felt going up is the main thing. You jump over some gears in a bullet bill and then you're just at the top. Trying to position yourself to not only bait the bullet bills but bait them over the curve of the head can be tricky to pull off, but since it's a uniform design across the entire head, one position that works for one bullet bill also works for all bullet bills, if that makes sense. So long story short, you just repeat the process. Break the initial cage, then the reinforcement cage, then the one with the grand star, and get the star. With not enough going on, this fight was disappointing, but still the creative genius of Megaleg pushes itself all the way up to number 4.
As far as the smaller scale boss fights go, this is the cream of the crop. It's one of the most nostalgic bosses in the game for me for some reason, although this placement isn't just due to rose-tinted glasses. It's a great use of the bomb booze, a really fun mechanic that only really shows up for this one level. It's satisfying blowing things up in any game, but I'll go on the record as saying spinning these guys around by their tongues beats a boring old rocket launcher any day. Enough punishment turns the Bouldergeist into a flying evil Adam's apple creature who you can hit again to send him into phase 2. That's right, he's got a second phase where he gets multiple new attacks. In a Mario game, that's pretty much unheard of, especially for a boss that's not even meant to be particularly significant. Now he has hands and can try to crush you as well as shielding his main body by tanking your Bombu attacks with his fists. The process remains the same, however, and one more blow to his Adam's apple takes him out. Bouldergeist is a fun, creative boss that I'll always look back on fondly as a key part of the Mario Galaxy experience, no matter how fleeting the fight itself may be.
A rare scent of chaos enters the fray with Bowser Jr.'s airship. These sort of fights are hard to come by in the Mario games, so whenever one pops up, it stands out in a good way. While it follows the same mechanic as Kamella, it feels more fitting in this fight in addition to the ship breaking the conventional rule of 3, requiring 5 hits to go down. Or maybe the mechanic is less better fitting and more just better made, the infinite loop of Koopa Troopa's Mogs having to endlessly wait for a shell which can just as easily roll away from you, and having unlimited ammo takes off on the bullcrap in play. 2 Kamex spawn in during the beginning, but I tend to avoid killing them just because it makes it that much more intense. All the while, the airship shoots those beach ball looking things in long volleys, with each passing Koopa shell you hit him with increasing the danger of his ship. For example, bullet bills replace the beach ball bombs. It's an all-around great time, and balancing careful pushes with platforming and dodging is very original for a Mario game, so Bowser Jr.'s airship is no doubt a boss worthy of a spot so high.
This really is just objectively the best boss in the game in my opinion. For starters, the music is epic in a way that perfectly captures the scale of this intergalactic conflict and adds a lot to the quality of the fight. The fight is dynamic as well. It changes how you damage Bowser every few hits, which is a great test of how well you've mastered various mechanics, and a nice summary to round off the end of the game. He has the most varied attack pool in the game by a wide margin and can layer some moves over each other, which makes for interesting situations. The shockwaves and fireballs in particular can come together with multiple moves like his jump attack to create enjoyable chaos not really found anywhere else other than the Bowser Jr. airship fight. I think a game's final boss being its best is always a great thing, since that's the note it sends you out on, but I'll confidently vouch that Mario Galaxy saved its best for last.
Thank you guys for watching. We enjoyed making this, and of course, we hope you guys enjoyed as well. Make sure to check in next week for my ranking of the bosses of The Force Unleashed 2 and follow up to last week's ranking of the bosses of the first Force Unleashed. Thanks so much for all the support and massive leap in subscribers and viewership we've had recently, and we appreciate it so much. So, with that said, deuces.